Hey guys, today I'm about to show you why 95% of Bitcoin influencers are either lying to you or have no idea what they're talking about. And more importantly, I'm going to show you actual data that reveals what's really happening in Bitcoin, data that most of these influencers have never even heard of, to be honest. A little bit about myself. I'm Tristan. I've been in Bitcoin since I was 16, and I've been programming since I was 14 as well. In the past few years, I've been obsessed with understanding how Bitcoin works and the psychology behind crypto traders with a data-driven mindset. And today we're going to look at what the blockchain is actually saying, not what some guy with laser eye profile picture wants you to believe. And here's the thing that always bothered me about Bitcoin analysis. Everyone's always obsessed with price action, drawing lines on the chart, or what some guy on Twitter thinks, but they're either selling you something, following the crowd, or just making predictions based on like hopium rather than data. And while traders are drawing lines on price charts, institutions are reading the blockchain. Every transaction, every UTXO movement, every wallet behavior, it's all public data that tells you exactly what's happening beneath the surface. So one example I want to show is the peak mania phase of during 2021's bull market. And while influencers were screaming at you to buy the dip when Bitcoin was going from 57 range bound to 40K during this entire distribution phase up here, take a look at like what long-term holders were doing during that entire period. They were selling and offloading Bitcoin en masse. And then the blockchain was literally showing clear signs of distribution. If you're listening to influencers instead of reading the actual data, you probably bought during this period, and I did too, thinking you were getting a discount, and then the market crashed from over 50%, from about 60K to 30K in May of 2021. And many short-term holders were also capitulating during this period here, in which they were buying this whole distribution phase and then selling the whole way down up until the bear market. And if you didn't sell, you had to wait 5 years after the bear market just to break even when Bitcoin hit it at about March 12, 2024. The truth is, honestly, the blockchain tells you everything you need to know. You just need to know how to read it. And that's exactly what I'm going to show you today. So every Bitcoin transaction is recorded forever. And when you know how to analyze this data, you can see exactly what different types of cohorts of different types of holders are doing. So when you think about it like this, when someone buys or sells or sends or receives Bitcoin, that creates a UTXO, an unspent transaction output, with an exact timestamp and the exact price when that Bitcoin was last moved on chain. When someone sells that Bitcoin, the UTXO gets spent and consumed. And since you can see every UTXO recorded permanently on the blockchain, you can track millions of these outputs and inputs and see precisely when different cohorts of holders are selling. You can distinguish these between long-term holders and short-term holders, whales or retail investors, and you can calculate when they're realizing profits or losses based on the original cost basis that they sent or received the Bitcoin. So this is Chart Inspect, the platform I built to make this data accessible. And let me show you a couple of powerful indicators that reveal what's actually happening on the blockchain. So this is a standard SOPR. So it's the spent output profit ratio. That's basically what I was talking about when you're receiving Bitcoin or sending Bitcoin at a certain price stamp. And when you sell it, that price gets locked on chain, and you can basically realize those losses or profits whenever someone sells or buys. And this shows you when people are selling at a loss or a profit. So above 1 means it's a profit, and below 1 means it's a loss. And I've applied a 30-day moving average here because the original indicator is very, very noisy. So in order to look at it a bit better, you can also look at the adjusted SOPR. So the adjusted variation is essentially a variation that excludes the output. No, it excludes the Bitcoins being held for less than an hour. And this gives you a clearer picture of when actual investor behavior is occurring, and not just people either sending through their exchanges or exchange shuffling Bitcoins through different exchanges. So the next indicator I want to show is the SOPR volatility ratio. So it's the spent output profit ratio's deviation in terms of volatility, which is the standard deviation in this case. So for the long-term holder SOPR SVR, the volatility ratio, you can clearly see that whenever we reach periods of high risk, long-term holders typically are offloading, relatively speaking, to the historical volatility, which is the standard deviation. And that results in periods of high ratio. And conversely, when Bitcoin's price is either going sideways or not doing much, then, or during periods of bear markets, then you can see that the volatility ratio is actually either going to zero or negative or going sideways. You can see this in all the bear markets that have occurred historically, and even the one in November of 2022. So this is one variation of the SVR that you can look at. You can also look at the short-term holder SOPR variation, which is a little bit noisier and it's more prone to volatility, but you can still see that whenever Bitcoin reaches those high volatility regimes relative to historical volatility, that can typically mark periods of high risk. And another way you can look at it is also the adjusted SOPR, which is very similar, but as you can see, periods of high volatility can correspond to tops, to local tops, and low volatility or negative volatility can also correspond to local lows in the price. So another way to look at this is also to look at it through the long-term holder, extreme long-term holder profits to losses, unrealized profits or losses. It's not SOPR, but not spent output profit ratio, not tracking when someone's selling or someone's buying, but it's literally just what is the total unrealized profit or loss in the system on the blockchain. And this is actually a very, very interesting mean reversion model. And I've actually programmed this myself, and you can look at all the indicators by cohort, by short-term holders, by long-term holders. You can also see the exact calculations I'm using on my website. And yeah, so this one is very interesting in that we are actually experiencing a very high level of volatility compared to historical levels. And another indicator I want to look at here is the Nuple by cohort, which is taking into consideration this net unrealized profit and loss that I've just discussed. And it's converting that into an actionable risk metric that you can see whenever max pain, capitulation, fear, optimism, greed, euphoria are in play. And when you're looking at these overall groups, the overall Nuple, short-term holders Nuple, these are the speculators, long-term holders, the diamond hands, and the AVIV Nuple, which actually uses cumulative investor caps for the true market mean. And if you want to learn more about how these are all calculated, you can check each individual chart on the website to learn more. And yeah, so this chart basically shows us the 6 phases that I discussed. And currently we're actually in the greed zone, which with sprinkles of euphoria at around 120K. We briefly touched it at 106K, but then we went briefly back into an optimism phase, which you could have sold at 110K and bought back at 82K, but the majority of the time you want to be selling in periods of high risk where the entire market across the board is experiencing high risk. And there are multiple different indicators to look at when these regime changes are happening, but this is just one of them, and it's not perfect, but it certainly gives you a general overview of what the market's feeling at any given time with respect to historical volatility and all that. So it's based on mathematics, not just people telling you, oh, the price is going to go higher. It's going to go to 1 million. Do you trust me? So let's switch to another indicator, which shows you the hodler's net position change. This shows you when basically long-term investors are actually accumulating, when everyone else is panicking, and every bull market top, massive red bars show up and money distributes to retail. So whenever the bars go to green, that means a positive flow into net hodlers' wallets. And whenever it goes into the red, that means net hodlers are basically distributing their Bitcoin. So whenever influencers are telling you to hodl forever at risk, at periods of high risk, or sell everything at periods of clear accumulation when hodlers are basically buying up all the Bitcoin they can, the actual hodlers are showing us their behavior through their actions, and the data doesn't lie. And here's what I want you to understand. Bitcoin is the most transparent financial system in human history. Every transaction, every hodler behavior, every market cycle is recorded permanently and publicly. These indicators that I showed you, the SOAP or Nuple net hodler position, they're not just opinions, they're mathematical representations of actual market behavior. And the next time someone tells you when Bitcoin's going to $1 million next week or that it's going to go to zero, it can go both ways. Ask them to show you the on-chain data. Ask them about SOAP or ask them about Nuple. Most of them won't even know what you're talking about, and that should tell you everything you need to know about them. If they do, then that's a different story in my opinion, but as always, you need to do your own research, and on-chain data can show you where things are heading. Finally, if you want to stop being manipulated by influencer narratives and start making decisions based on actual data, everything I showed you today is available at our website, chartandspec.com, and more. The link is in the description, and all the on-chain data I have and programmed is available for 100% free. The reason I'm making this is because I want to make educational content about this, breaking down these advanced metrics. And if you want to learn more about Bitcoin or reading the blockchain like a pro analyst, then hit subscribe and let me know in the comments what metrics you want me to explain next. And remember, in a world of influencers and narratives, just look to the data. The blockchain itself is one invaluable source of truth. There's many out there. So learn to read it and you'll never be misled again. Thanks for watching.